High Court has ruled that the Judicial Service Commission must rehold its interviews for candidates for the Constitutional Court after strong criticism to the interviews held earlier this year. Let's speak about this more with Lawson Naidoo, who's the Executive Director at Casac. Mr. Naidoo, thank you so much for making time. When are interviews for the Constitutional Court justices expected to be redone?
Good afternoon, and thank you very much. Let me just clarify one thing in your opening. This has not been a court order as yet. It is a settlement agreement between the parties that is being placed before the court to be made an order of the court. We've been asked by the court to present arguments in support of the settlement agreement tomorrow, whereafter we expect that it will be made an order. But the issue of when these interviews will be conducted again is really a matter for the Judicial Service Commission to respond to. They have agreed in terms of the settlement agreement that the interviews that were conducted in April were unlawful, were outside of the bounds of what is permissible in terms of the Constitution. So they violated their constitutional mandate in the manner in which those interviews were conducted and need to do them again. So the JSC will have to come up with a time frame for that. We now also know that there are two additional vacancies on the Constitutional Court which will arise in coming months. And so, the JSC faces now the prospect of needing to fill 4 vacancies rather than just 2.
Yeah, just to remind our viewers of some of the concerns you had as Casac about the interview processes that unfolded a couple of months ago.
Well, the application that we lodged in the High Court was really based on the fact that we were of the view that the interviews themselves were conducted in a highly irregular and unfair manner to the candidates who placed themselves before the Judicial Service Commission. They were asked irrelevant questions that delved into issues of politics and party politics. And candidates were severely prejudiced by the nature of the questions that were being asked by the Commission, that the Chief Justice who was presiding over the JSC interview process failed to intervene to adequately protect the candidates from such unfair questions, and that tainted the whole interview process and then rendered the recommendations that were made by the President, by the JSC to the President, similarly unlawful. And we know from the site of the record of the deliberations of the JSC in closed session, that they had no meaningful evaluation of the attributes of each of the candidates. They merely endorsed a list of 5 names that the Chief Justice produced out of nowhere.
Yeah, and we know Judge Pillay is not on the list, my understanding, on the list of the judges that will be interviewed once again once this process begins. Any reasons for that you're aware of?
Well, I think the first thing to say is that list of names that you're referring to is a list of names for the 2 further vacancies that has arisen. In terms of this agreement, the JSC will now have to go back to all of those people who were interviewed in April, including Judge Pillay, and it would be up to each of those candidates to determine whether or not they're going to participate in a rerun of those interviews. Whether or not Judge Pillay does so is a question for her. Our concern has been with the lack of integrity in the process rather than the hopes of or aspirations of any individual judge. But the JSC is going to now have to go back to each of those people and ask them if they're willing to put themselves forward for a fresh set of interviews, which will hopefully conform to the constitutional requirements.
Yeah. What are the implications of this delaying? My understanding is the bench is supposed to comprise of 11 judges. What's the plan for after October? Should these interviews not be concluded and judges appointed? Would that mean that we've got 5 acting judges on the bench, given that there are the 2 vacancies, and my understanding is there are 3 more justices that are retiring in October?
That is correct, and compounding the issue is that there are 2 judges that are currently on long leave as well. So there are a number of acting justices on the Constitutional Court at the moment. As you say, this will be exacerbated in October when there are 3 more vacancies, including that of the Chief Justice, whose term also expires in October. So it's ready now for the JSC to get around to re-advertising the new vacancies and for the presidency to begin the process of identifying a new Chief Justice. So there's a lot of work to be done in terms of replenishing the vacancies that currently exist and are likely to, or that will come into existence in the next couple of months.
Yeah, and let's hope that process begins as a matter of urgency, because basically the Constitutional Court now is 5 permanent justices down already, given that Justices Jafta and Kampepe are on long leave, as you say, the Chief Justice is on leave. It doesn't look like we even have an acting Deputy Chief Justice.
Well, indeed. I mean, I think this is a highly undesirable situation at the top court in the country. And, you know, this is something that the JSC needs to deal with as a matter of urgency. And, you know, they need to be re-advertising, as I say, the new vacancies that have arisen, because all of those candidates that were down for interview in October now have to be interviewed again for the April round. So the October round does not have a list, and they have to now re-advertise that once again.
Mr. Naidoo, thank you so much for that. Let's hope things will move really, really quick. Lawson Naidoo is the Executive Director at Casac. Still to come.